Hello there, folks. I would like to talk to you about the state of cassette tapes in the Netherlands. So this is a box of tapes that are all available in the Netherlands to buy. I did cheat a bit, but most of them are still readily available. I bought these in the last 2 or 3 years. And they are of all the brands that we are not used to because they're relatively new brands, recent brands. I needed a baseline, so I went for the good old TDK D60 tape as a baseline. I set up this Denon cassette deck to be biased for that tape, and then I recorded all of these tapes with that setting, which is not ideal, but it's a realistic representation of how it would go in most cases, because most people don't have decks that have bias control. There's 1 or 2 Chrome tapes in here, and I used the TDK SAX as a reference for that. Reason I included this TDK-D is because we need to hear what the recording would sound like on a decent, affordable Ferro tape. So a Type 1 tape, and that's what most of these tapes are. Have a look at those shiny boxes. So Chrome tapes are currently not being produced at all. So all you can get is ferric tapes, and I think that ATR has been making some chromium-like tapes, but it's a bit of a weird story, and they are in here actually. Which gets weird, you will see soon. Now the recordings I used to make these tapes are 2.5 minutes long, and I don't want you to have to look at me for 2.5 minutes with my headphones on listening to music before I give my verdict. So the idea is I'm going to just show 10-15 seconds of each tape, the same bit of music every time, and then give you my verdict. And at the end of the video, there's the long version of everything, and you get the whole row of tapes, 2.5 minutes of each tape, so you can listen for yourself. These tapes are recorded with peak levels of +3 dBs, but it doesn't mean, as you will see, that they are actually recorded at +3 dBs. Some of them capture the music louder, some of them capture it quieter. A little more on that later. Let's get started. The sun has just come out, as you can tell. I'm not going to close the curtain. I know it's not ideal for the video because we get this weird contrast, but it's way too lovely outside to close the curtains. Let's start with our first tape. It is the TDK-D, your classic TDK-D of the last generation as far as I know. These are pretty okay tapes, pretty noisy, but not too bad as a reference for a good ferric tape. So let's give it a listen. So there was a bit of a dropout in the beginning. That is because this tape was used once or twice before and apparently took a bit of a beating. Other than that, it sounds pretty good. It's crisp in the highs, the mid-range is open, a bit thin maybe, and the lows are not overly warm sounding. They're a bit compressed, but really pleasant. Also, it sounds, except for that one dropout, very tidy, very tight. A nice sounding budget tape, and I also didn't mind the tape hiss that much at all. Speaking of sunny, look at this orange happy tape. It's the Recording the Masters Fox C90. It's based on BASF SM911, made in France, sort of designed in the Netherlands. And this is your go-to tape brand right now if you buy a tape in the Netherlands. Let's give it a listen and see how it compares to the TDK and the tapes that are going to come. Okay, so this is a brand new tape, but it has a few dropouts. If you listen through headphones, you can hear them very clearly. They're not a deal breaker though. You wouldn't notice them through loudspeakers, and from experience I can tell you these are not going to get worse with age. So you're safe to use them. So this is the 90-minute tape, so it's slightly thinner than the 60-minute tape. That may be a bit better. We're about to find out. Spoiler alert. It's literally the next tape. It's not a very exciting spoiler. Other than that, it sounded alright. It doesn't quite have the transparency of the TDK. The low end is similar. The mid-range though is a bit better. It's a bit more, it has a bit more body in the mid-range. I don't mind this tape at all. So this is okay in my book. And then here, in a slightly different shade, because this one's yellowish, this one's more orangish, the Recording the Masters Fox C60. And you may think it's the same tape, but it's actually not. Because as you may be able to see, even though the C60 is quite a bit shorter than the C90, There's actually not that much of a difference when it comes to the amount of tape in the shell. It's a bit less, but not that much less. So this has a slightly thicker tape in it, which usually means it can handle a bit more of a beating. Let's see if this has less dropouts. It does not. It has the same amount of dropouts, but it seems to be a bit more transparent in the highs, which is fair enough. I mean, the TDK was a D60 as well, but you may need 90 minutes and then the Fox C60 is just fine. But the D60 is slightly more transparent sounding, and I had the feeling it was also a bit more dynamic. It had a bit more of an attack. These are minor differences audited through pretty good headphones and a Musical Fidelity X-Can headphone preamp. So I'm being very critical here, but it does seem to be slightly better than the C90. Not to such an extent that you may want to avoid the C90. To be honest, I would just buy a TDK-D, but it's definitely a slightly better tape, so if you don't need the length, go for the 60. This is the GPO C90 cassette. Now, GPO makes all sorts of stuff these days. Portable boomboxes, cassette tapes apparently. They make portable cassette recorders and whatnot. It's one of those cheap brands that you buy in small mom and pop stores and on Amazon and such. They even have their own labels with GPO on it. I'm not sure if it's going to correct for the light, but there you go. I did not expect very much from this. The tape itself doesn't have any branding, which is quite stylish, but shows you it's just a generic OEM product. Let's see how it sounds. The dropouts are pretty strong with this one. Also, it's much quieter than the rest, even though it was recorded at the same level. And those levels are actually quite interesting. If you look at this screenshot of my audio software that I use to record this into the computer, you can see that there's some major differences in sound levels. That has to do with biasing and with the sensitivity of the tape and whatnot. It doesn't really mean the tape sounds worse if the level is lower, but you often get a bit more tape hiss. And it is a telltale sign of a cheap tape. Now, did this tape sound bad? Actually, no, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't cheap either. This is €7 tape. The others were 5 so far. This shouldn't be expensive, but it's probably imported from Eastern Europe, an Asian country. I have absolutely no idea. Does it even say so on the back? The barcode starts with 5. I will put a little line of text telling you where that's from, because that's not the Netherlands. The Netherlands are 8. This tape is usable. If you don't have a critical setup, it's actually usable. I expected this to be as bad as the AliExpress tapes. It's not. So honestly, I wouldn't buy it, but I'm probably going to use it for something not critical. Next up, the Capture Performance Audio Cassette series. I found this one on Amazon at some point. It's made in the USA, and it's a pretty good looking tape as well. I like what they did with the label. It's also a ferric tape, 60 minutes, so 30 minutes per side. And yeah, good looking box, good looking tape. I had no idea what to expect, but I ordered it, and this is how it sounds. Now, you may be tempted to think with all of these dropouts that this tape looks super rough. It does not. It's probably a magnetization problem. The tape has loads of very small dropouts and it's continuous, where the Fox had a few every now and then, and this had a few more. This one is a continuous grain fest, more or less. Not an issue if you don't sit too close to your speakers, you wouldn't notice, but it's a sign of a not very well made tape, which is a pity. Because I think so far this is the best sounding of the bunch. It has all of the dynamics, loose low end, transparent open but punchy mids. It's a really lovely sounding ferric tape. It's got loads of dropouts. I'm probably going to use this for some old reggae recordings because they're going to sound great on it, and you wouldn't know anyway with old reggae. Which brings us to ATR, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. For two reasons. First of all, this is a tape that is easy to find in the US of A. They're even doing a chrome tape on a really cool little cassette with open reels in it. Doesn't do anything good and it's way too expensive, but it's kind of cool. And also, indeed, it is a chrome tape that is being sold as Pro Chrome Master Cassette. Well, we'll be the judge. Droppy outy a bit, you'd almost think it's my deck, but this one didn't have it. Just in the beginning one, and then it was tight as a button. But other than that, that's a really good sounding tape. It's super dynamic. It is very crisp and clear. The mid-range is beautiful and the low end is really loose, especially for a cheap chrome oxide tape. That's really good because usually ferric tapes are slightly better at low end. So I thought to myself, well great, I'm gonna buy all of the ATR tapes. Now, I accidentally also bought this one. It keeps looking for my face. I have to force it to focus on the tape. It's an ATR Magnetics. It says nothing sound like tape. Do you see that? I guess that is true in a way. ATR Magnetics Pro Chrome Master Cassette Tape. Limited edition. And the difference is that this one doesn't have a transparent shell. Should be the same tape. Chrome Type 2 cassette. It's exactly the same label as well. Let's give it a listen. It started off quite alright. It's much quieter again, as you saw in the screenshot before. But other than that, you know, pretty crisp, a bit thin sounding, a bit weird how much quieter it is. And then it started distorting so much. Even though it's recorded at the same levels, it obviously can't handle that, even though this should be the same tape. I used it in another cassette deck that does have a manual bias control, and there's no way of getting it to sound good. Now I am comparing the tapes now. This is the first time I do it. And they look absolutely not the same. This one looks much coarser, which probably explains some of the dropouts than this one. But this one has some weird lines running over it, almost like it's misproduced. But that wouldn't really explain why it's quieter and distorting so much. It would explain some of the dropouts, which are actually not that bad on this one. So I have no idea what's going on. They're trying to sell these as the same tape. They are absolutely not the same tape. They may be, but then the quality control is absolutely horrendous. So bit of a disappointment, that one, so maybe don't buy the ATR Pro Chrome tape. Maybe this is more interesting. It's also ATR. This is a ferric tape. I don't really know what MDS cassette tape means, but it is a thing. It's your long play set, bias setting to normal, so it's normal bias tape. 120 microseconds. There's a lot of text on this. This also says, enjoy the rich analog sound of magnetic tape. Make your recordings on compact cassette tapes from the tape experts ATR Magnetics. Which is fair enough, because ATR was the big competitor to Quantigy and Ampex back in the day, so you'd expect them to know what they're doing. It's just that even if you know what you're doing, that doesn't mean you can get the base materials to make these tapes. Now I do appreciate this one has screws, because I really like the shell on the label, so if this is shit, I'm gonna put some different tape in it. But let's give it a fair fighting chance. Okay, we don't need to put different tape in this one. That was actually quite okay. You can tell it has a hard time keeping the highs transparent. They are sort of hissy and lispy, not completely open. This tape sounds like it would prefer a higher speed than 1/7/8 inches per second or 4.75 centimeters per second. But other than that, it's a pretty good sounding tape. It sounds like an old reel-to-reel tape where the highs are not all there, the mid-range is nice and open, and the lows are pretty and loose. So if you use some lo-fi recordings on this, again, old reggae, old 50s recordings, not jazz, that usually sounds too good for this. That's actually kind of a nice tape to use, but you have to use it for something that doesn't have a lot of highs. I'd say anything above about 12 kilohertz, sort of iffy. Next up, another Amazon one. I think actually I had this sent from the UK. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this one's actually available in the Netherlands. This one starts with 5 as well, so maybe that is the UK. It is an EQ Professional, manufactured in 2021. Nice shell, transparent with the logo on it. Pretty good looking tape. Pretty generic, but good. I'm not sure why it's so sloppy. The stickers just fell on the floor. I can't get to them now. I hope you can live without having seen them. But it's a pretty good looking tape. So let's see how this good looking tape sounds. Oh. Though this one has a little bit of the low-end compression, it's not nearly as bad as the TDK tape in the beginning. It's a pretty open sounding low end. The mid-range is perfect. There's none of the wooliness that some of these tapes had. And the highs are really nice, slightly rolled off, but really pleasant sounding. This is my favorite so far, the EQ Professional, manufactured in 2021. Recommended, definitely recommended. Now this one I know for sure that I got in the UK. And to be honest, I've had this one a little longer. I think this is one of those tapes from Cassette Comeback. Yeah, Cassette Comeback is a YouTube channel. And at some point they manufactured their tapes. A C64 tape, which I think is kind of cute. They have their own stickers with a diagonal line on it. Very stylish. The inside's just white. I think this is home printed actually. You can see the inkjet printer quality. And the tape itself is unbranded. There's nothing on it. I had these actually shipped to my Airbnb when I was in the UK in 2018, so this is a bit older. This is actually that got me started on this idea, and this is how it sounds. Not the worst I've heard. Dropouts are back. Highs are very rolled off. Mid's okay, bit muddy, and the low end's actually pretty good. The official, I think this tape is officially branded as an NAC neck C456. I'm surprised they got away with this because of EMTEC has a 456. I don't know what it's based on. It's not great. It's not horrible either, but I wouldn't buy these with all of the other choices we have. It's just a bit messy, so could be worse, could be better, but nothing to get excited about, I am afraid. Next up, bit of a surprise. I was on, I think it was Amazon again, and I saw these Gallunoptimal tapes, which is probably the worst brand I've heard. It doesn't sound good at all. Tape looks pretty okay, and they call them UR. Ideal für die tägliche Aufnahme, ideal for daily recording. So I tried one of these, it's a 5-pack. I tried one of these in my Iowa and I couldn't get it biased properly. It was extremely bright and much quieter. And other than that, actually not that bad, but it reminded me a bit of a very overdone Maxell UR, which is also a pretty bright tape. And then I threw it into the Denon. And biased it with the Denon as TDKD, which the Iowa is capable of as well, but for some reason it couldn't figure it out, and this is what we got. It's a dropout fest and it's extremely bright. Again, if you just have a simple, portable radio or a rack system, this should work. That's probably better than the rack system's ever going to be able to make it sound anyway. And the brightness may actually add a little because these rack systems tend to sound pretty muffled. But it's obviously not a great tape. It's way too bright. There's not a lot of low end. The mid-range is very thin and a bit nasal. And it's so dropouty. It's the most dropouty of the bunch so far. So unfortunately, the Gallunoptimal UR can't recommend. Still gonna probably find some use case for it. 78 RPM records or so. I like having weird tapes that I actually use. So TDK-B. It's one of those tapes that you can only buy on slightly dodgy websites. I'm still not sure if this is actually TDK or if it is a ripoff. It's a very cheap tape that is very noisy when winding. It does have the TDK logos everywhere. It's right there. And it is on the stickers. Are we focusing? I think we are. And then there's this thing on the back, and I'm not sure what that's all about. But anyway, yeah, it looks like it is a TDK tape. But does it sound like a TDK tape? Because these are very cheap. And if these sound any good, well, that's a nice bonus. Let's give it a shot. That hurts. That's not a, well, even if it is a TDK, they should be very ashamed. Now, I think these are made for different markets. I think these are sold in India and such a lot. But even then, this is just unusable. So many dropouts and no highs, no lows. It's just a very shit sounding, distorting tape. Unfortunately, I bought a 5-pack, but they were very cheap. I think I paid like €8 for the 5-pack or so. If you really need tapes for like handheld recorders or something, I guess you can get these cheap, but you may as well just buy random second-hand TDKDs, because even the most beat-up TDKDs usually sound better than this. And then there's a little bonus one. Before the major cassette label in the Netherlands, Cassette Duplicator in the Netherlands, started selling these, and that's actually the story. The guy behind the Bandjesfabriek in the Netherlands actually pushed Recording the Masters to start making cassettes. They were like, hey, you've got your SM900 and SM911, can't you just make cassette tapes of it? And they did, and that's where this came from, thank goodness. But before that, he still had some old stock of EMTEC BASF ferric tapes. And you could order tapes on demand with him, you still can, and he would use this Tapestock by BASF. It's all the same thickness. I think it's the thickness you use for 90 minutes, so you can get it in like, I think 100 minutes or shorter. And this, back in the day at least, and this is 75 minutes because that seemed practical to have. I have like 20 of these. They were pretty cheap back then. I think they were like €1.80. Well, they came with a box, but it's just a generic transparent box. There's no labels or nothing, but you buy these to do your own duplication and your own labels. And let's see how it sounds. That's actually a bit sad. This sounds amazing. This is by far the best sounding tape of this bunch. No wow and flutter issues, no dropouts, nice highs, mids and lows. Yeah, but they don't make them like this anymore. I'm happy I bought that pile back then, but this is not a tape you can get anymore. I just added it because it is the newest old style tape that I have. Unfortunately, you can't get this anymore. And after all is said and done, it's easy in most of Europe to get these tapes, and I do recommend them. They are just fine. But if you want to spend a little more or take a little more effort getting tapes, this is my favorite. The EQ Professional Type 1 C90. Now I am going to try to see if I can find a C60 of this, see if it's even better. But for now, this is my favorite tape that is available right now, new and not new old stock, because this is all new available tapes. At least they were in the last couple of years. Some of them may already be gone by now. So that's my verdict. The EQ Professional is the best ferric tape you can buy now, at least for this kind of use. I'm sure if you have like a deck that you can very precisely adjust to the tape, you may get more out of one of these others. Yeah, for when it comes to just simply playing and recording tapes with a deck that doesn't have bias control and everything, this is a very good all-rounder. And I'm looking forward to recording a full mixtape or something on this, because it's a really enjoyable tape. Now let me find that label that I dropped. Oh, here it is. Which tape did that belong to again? Oh, that is the one. Okay, so here's the label that you do need to see this, don't you? It's gonna do a victory lap now. Here's the tape again. Here's the paperwork. Inside of the paperwork, it's pretty stylish. It's a nice, extremely transparent, high quality box, because these new boxes are not all of the same quality anymore. I'm gonna put these back in my tape storage. They were all in this box for this video. They have been for quite some time. I've been meaning to do this. I hope this was of some use to all of you. And I wish you all a lovely, what is it today? A lovely Wednesday, the 15th of March. This is not gonna be released today, but that doesn't matter. I say bye-bye.